My name is Carroll Shelby. I build race cars.
Carroll Shelby is kind of a salesman and a hustler, and he's kind of compensating for the fact he could no longer race himself.
Guy wins the 24-hour Le Mans, suddenly retires, starts selling cars. It just don't make sense.
He was a master of that kind of diplomacy. He knew how to sell anything to anyone and kind of manage a bunch of competing agendas and relationships in order to get what he wanted.
Shelby, you're up bright and early.
Well, early bird gets the worm, Pops.
One of the advantages of this project having taken 10 years to come to fruition was that at the very beginning of it, we got to meet Carroll Shelby.
I had an instructor tell me,
Don, I would say it's probably a good time to buckle up.
do everybody a favor, stay on the ground. That's a true story.
And that was a massive advantage to us, because if you've met the person that you're writing about and there's something about their spirit that you witnessed, you don't forget it.
Shelby was a very funny person,
Tell you what, that's like riding a bike.
a very knowledgeable person, and a very serious person, but he would give you his time when you wanted to talk to him. It wasn't like, you know, talking around you and over you, this kind of thing.
How y'all doing?
Talk about making an entrance.
I'll hold that thought. Hey, Peter, how you doing?
He has a kind of incredible Type A personality, and he's an obsessive race car driver who suddenly can't do the thing he loves anymore. And he's kind of set himself up with a business where he's almost compensated for the lack of the excitement of the track by trying to get that same high being an entrepreneur.
Shelby brings the experience of a man who's reached the mountaintop. He's the only American to have ever won a Le Mans. Shelby has a wisdom on the starting grid for this amazing opportunity.
Fill the tank.
Shelby, you just...
Am I on fire? Am I on goddamn fire?
No, you're not on fire.
Fill the tank.
Fill the tank.
He was really on the cusp of kind of fading into oblivion and just being another guy hustling, trying to sell cars to people. And this was an unbelievable opportunity for him to pivot into becoming a world-class car maker, becoming like the preeminent designer. Obviously, we know he's succeeded because we know about the Shelby Mustang and we know about his name today.
Carroll Shelby. Maybe. Lee Iacocca, Ford Motor.
Everything that has to do with Shelby. Even today, you can go by that Super Snake, and it's Shelby all over that car. And they're building these Cobras, and they're building kit Cobras as well as restoring the original Cobras.
I feel a tremendous responsibility when it's a real person. There's a ton of documentaries that have been made and a ton of existing interviews. And it's really helpful because his voice was very distinct. I spent a lot of time on that.
Wake up, Lee. It's your partner calling from those fancy new offices you bought me.
I listen to him a lot. You just try to make it so it's second nature.
We wanted him to feel like Carroll Shelby. And originally we could have had some of the more over-the-top clothes, but he doesn't need the costume to define the character so much and be so exaggerated. So he wears his cowboy hat, which, you know, Carroll Shelby wore a lot, and his crocodile cowboy boots.
These guys, they're drivers. They're always on a racetrack. So Jim always wanted them to look kind of sunburned, weathered. They're always greasy. They're always working in the engines.
There's a lot of stuff post-building the GT40 that he did reflecting on it, and I found that very helpful too, because it was an older man looking back in retrospect and talking about some of these relationships and some of these times. Charlie was the one we spent the most time with in pre-production, and he was on set as well.
I'm Charles Agape. I was a crew chief and chief mechanic at Carroll Shelby, Shelby American. Prior to that, I was with Ken Miles as like his own personal race mechanic on much lesser cars. And mostly when I was talking to Matt and Christian, they wanted to know more about Ken Miles, his activities, how he acted, what he was doing. And the same with Matt as well as Carroll Shelby.
We're gonna eat those vets for breakfast. We're lighter, we're faster, and that don't work, we're nastier.
Matt has such a great understanding of cameras, the lenses. Like, he was talking with Jim all the time about, well, you're gonna cut out of this shot at this point, you're gonna edit it this way. Totally different approach to me, how I do it. And I think he's gonna make a really good director at some point.
Yeah, not to make it too technical, but no.
I got it. No, I got it.
I think Matt was a natural at kind of that almost musicality of Carroll Shelby that he kind of mesmerizes.
Give me one reason why I don't fire everyone associated with this abomination, starting with you.
Matt and I worked a long time on the scenes where he kind of holds forth or tells a story, and you almost fall into the spell of his words.
Hell, right now, we don't even know if our paint job will last the whole 24 hours. But our last lap clocked 218 miles an hour down the Mulsanne Straight. Now, in all his years of racing, old Enzo ain't never seen anything move that fast. We're faster than he is.
Because in many ways, his character, it's both his strength and his liability, is that he can talk his way out of almost anything. And when someone can talk their way out of almost anything, it means they've lived an almost unaccountable life. So in some ways, the movie is very much about Shelby also having to kind of own pain or own loss or feel it and maybe not have a way to dance out of it.
Go ahead, Carroll. Go to war.
Thank you, sir.
So I was watching a monologue where Matt Damon is explaining who he is and what he's about and how lucky some people are to get to do what they love. And I was watching him do it multiple takes, and it was riveting.
He's equal parts a brilliant artist and such a kind and genuine and awesome human being, and he's unbelievably committed and at the same time completely sort of available to be a sounding board and to help carve this thing out.
I always say it's like tennis, where you want to play against somebody who's as good or better than you because they're hitting the ball correctly. And I would say that Matt Damon and Christian Bale are as good at tennis players as you get in the whole world.
Ken, I'm sorry. Sincerely.
Actually, our approach to acting is very similar to, the difference between our characters, between Shelby and Miles. Shelby, who is very strategic and much more understanding of the bigger picture, and who is also a bloody great driver, as Matt is an incredible actor, really nuanced and subtle and everything, and then versus Miles, and me, who are just sort of, just doing whatever we do.
Do you have any idea the kind of shit that I had to eat just to get 4 wheels on that grid? No, you don't, because you don't deal with any of that stuff. Now knock it off, Ken. We got work to do, and this car ain't gonna build itself.
There's a scene in the middle of this movie where Carroll Shelby and Ken Miles get in a fist fight with each other, and it's kind of a scrappy, sort of fairly unsuccessful piece of combat. And the idea that you've got Jason Bourne and Batman having that fight is just irresistible.
It wasn't written as well as they pulled it off. We sort of wrote it as this fraternal conflict where, they're fighting, but they don't really want to hurt each other. No one wants to break anyone's nose here. And they came up with loads of stuff that wasn't even on the page. Like, I think at one point Matt picks something up that's like a tin or something that's heavy, and he's going to hit him with it, and then he picks like a bag of chips and hits him with that instead, which is great. That's the spirit of those two guys in that fight.
The great thing about two wonderful people, and I don't mean wonderful actors, they are, but just they're wonderful people, is that they come into a situation with no bullshit, with no baggage. They come in excited about making the picture and tremendous respect for each other.
I'll go to hell.